Welcome to the Corporate Venturing Insider Series, where I interview top practitioners in the CVC world and learn with you the best practices and golden nuggets that they have accumulated over their career. In this episode, we will be learning from Jaclyn Kossmann, investor team member at Applied Ventures. Jaclyn, could you take a few minutes to share your story and how you got to where you are today?
Thanks, Nicholas. To introduce myself, I'm Senior Investment Manager at Applied Ventures. I've been there now over 3 years. My career path, pretty circuitous, I'd say, which is somewhat how I like to operate. Similar to a startup, you have a plan, and sometimes you pivot and come back, or sometimes you find a new direction or new opportunities. Worked actually for many years in renewable energy at several startups in that world. Was very excited about clean tech and those innovations and how it was really going to impact society. So worked for venture and PE-backed startups, and then went to business school. Had a mentor in business school who was really a great coach and encouraged me to look closely at venture. He and I actually co-founded a fund in business school. So it was a student-run fund, and that was my first foray into venture, and I was definitely hooked. I didn't completely plan it perfectly. I did a little bit of angel investing, friends and family style investing earlier on, but officially a VC for 5 years now. And I really can't imagine doing anything else. I really love that you get paid to be curious. And you get paid to learn. You get to meet the most amazing, passionate, energetic, outgoing entrepreneurs that have blinders on, you don't want to break through walls. I'm just definitely a founder fan.
I learned something new, which I didn't know you had created your own fund during business.
Yeah, it was like a micro fund, I should say, but it was very cool. So I went to business school at Dartmouth, the Tuck School of Business, and we started this fund, and the mandate was to basically invest in startups affiliated with the local community. So affiliated with Dartmouth or located in the Upper Valley, injecting capital into the community locally. And there's actually a ton of great startups around there. I was always trying to rebrand the Upper Valley as the new Silicon Valley. It didn't quite catch on, but there's a lot of really good life science companies. There's a lot of strong programs and graduate programs, and there's a lot of people that graduate and want to stay there. So luckily they're able to retain a lot of talent in the area. So it was a great experience. I was lucky for the opportunity to start that fund.
And for Silicon Valley, if you can't compete with them, join them.
Yeah.
I like what you said about we're being paid to be curious. The way I phrase it is we are paid to learn. We are learning about so many things so quickly, and we're meeting exceptional people. And these people, this is their life's work. So they are really good at what they do. And we're being paid to help them to realize their dream and to shape the future. So it is really, really cool. I want to know more about your approach to helping startups. You hinted already a few things like access to customers and so on. Mm-hmm. But what's your personal approach? What do you do? Not just applied materials behind Applied Ventures, but what do you do to help entrepreneurs?
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing for existing portfolio companies, we take board observer seat or board director seat. So we're very involved with the company. One of the things I really enjoy is the coaching. You talk about how these founders are experts, and they absolutely are, but they do sometimes have blind spots like we all do. And as a VC, you pattern recognition, you start to see things, and you try and help your founders see around corners and help them with talent and recruiting, whether it's with the pipeline or for interviewing, helping them think through their financing strategy, helping them during COVID. Does the PPP loan make sense? It didn't make sense for every company. I try and provide feedback on kind of their narrative and their pitch and their deck and their materials and also their strategy, and then introduce them to people like TDK Ventures or other funds that I think might also be interested. I do believe in a big community and a big tent and being inclusive and helping make those connections as appropriate. Those are probably the top ways that I like to help startups. It's different every month. Either they're trying to land a customer and we're doing a customer call, or they're doing finance and I'm doing a call with an interested investor, or they're hiring or something else. I think just being clear about objectives and alignment and trying to communicate quickly whether I see a fit or not, I think is one of the bigger services I can do to startups that we're initially talking to as well.
I think you're right about saying no is very hard. And right now at TDK Ventures, we've had more than 900 startups coming to us. We've invested in 9, so we're at about 1%. And the way I like to simplify it is out of 100 you see, for about 90 of them, it's okay to say no. It's not to tap. There is always a very good reason to explain why. And then the next 4 is really hard. You really love them. You really want to go beyond. And then you still have to say no. Do you see that?
Yeah, no, it's really hard. And what I try and remind myself is that's just part of due diligence. Due diligence is, okay, this company seems interesting. Now let's do the homework. And that's a lot of work for the investor. And it's also a lot of work for the company, but it's not a rubber stamp. It's not a check the box. It's due diligence, right? We're digging deeper. We're answering a lot more questions. Sometimes those will guide us in a different direction for whatever reason. That's just part of the process. And I truly believe with us being strategic investors, I want to really be able to add value to our portfolio companies. And sometimes that's what surfaces out of due diligence is I like to also verbally communicate as well and try and give some of that feedback. I think oftentimes just given the lack of activity with engagement with us, sometimes it's not totally unexpected. I really like that idea of giving positives and also some feedback. And I think that's really valuable to the startup.
Nice. I really liked the way you phrased it. You talked about double opt-in, and it nearly feels like in my previous roles in sales or in business development or product marketing, it's fine to actually introduce someone to someone else. But in the VC world, it feels like if you don't do a double opt-in, it's like a faux pas.
I'm very much about inclusion and a big community and building relationships. I'm also very much about efficiency. And I find it a little bit frustrating sometimes when I don't get a double opt-in. And for me, it's not very actionable. I don't really know how to help them or the person or whatever it is. I'd rather have the opportunity to opt in and say, oh, yeah, this is definitely something I'm open to as a VC or even just as someone trying to network.
Have you ever invested in a company that came to you as a cold email?
Definitely in my prior role. One of the things I love about being a corporate VC is that a lot of the companies are recommended from employees with applied materials, or somehow we're already connected to the company. We do get a lot of inbound companies, and I'm sure we have. I can't think of an exact example for me currently at Applied Ventures, but definitely when I was more of a generalist VC, for sure. You got to be out there and you got to be doing it. So you shouldn't be bashful. But there's always been some connection already. And I think with where I personally invest right now, I'm really into AR and optics. I'm really into autonomous vehicles, auto sensors, LiDAR radar, etc., and some semiconductor equipment stuff. So I feel like those communities, especially on the AR side, are actually pretty small. So I pretty much already know everyone. And then kind of more just tracking them for when's the next financing opportunity. But I'm definitely open to it. That's why we have on our website, email us here. We do this exercise every year where we look at all the deals that have happened and that are of interest to us and trying to map what we missed. And we're always trying to close that gap. It's an indirect answer to your question. I can't think of one currently at Applied Ventures that I've done, but definitely open to it. And now I almost feel like I need to challenge myself to do that.
I think it's a good to challenge ourselves actually, because if we want to be more inclusive, we have to expect that some people won't get a chance for a warm introduction through the network. So actually, we're just answering one of the first Q&A questions that we had, which was percentage of companies we invested through cold call, or between a warm introduction and a cold email. And I think it happens to Applied Ventures is meeting in conferences, whether the startup was presenting or Applied Venture was presenting. I know that sometimes that's how the startup and corporate VC meets. And that's
Yeah.
not a cold email. This is actually a warm discussion. It's that with a context. And I find that if I was to give an advice to startups and corporate VCs, is make sure you go to conferences where it's actually appropriate for your investment thesis.
Yeah. From the CVC world, it's kind of like a big family in some ways. We bump into each other a lot. Warm intros for me go a really long way because I think whoever is making the referral knows us really well and knows me really well. And so they've saved me a little bit of time as we look at deal coverage. I would be curious to look at how many deals were inbound. I'm curious about the percentage of deals. I think we'll have to look into that.
There are some surprises. We've just done about 10 deals and we just looked back. And my expectation was maybe 1 or 2 out of 10 would come from inside CDK employees recommending a startup. We're at half of them. So this was really surprising. So I think it's really a good practice to go back through all the deals that happened and to understand where this came from. Now, it's funny because one of them that we're closing was closed and we announced later this month. We really had to check emails to know who came first because it was a CDK employee that told us about them. But there was someone else that actually also mentioned it to him, and we had to look at who was the first to tell us so that we could put it in the right place.
I know you were at TDK already, so you probably already had your network internally. But one of the things I have, obviously, my external network within venture and the startup community, but also internally, I have my champions that I go to or they come to me. And that's a really fun relationship. We will look at one segment together and be like, all right, here are the 10 startups. You're engaged with these ones. I've talked to these ones. Where's there an overlap? Like, who are we most bullish on? Because it's not just the capital resource, right? It's also the time resource of the business unit. So we have to think about the return on both and really be intentional about the startups we're working with. So I love the inbound deal sourcing or deal vetting. And that's, again, advantage of corporate venture is I had this bench of 10 experts on any particular subject matter that helped me very quickly dice something up into, does this really make sense? Can this be commercialized? I definitely love having that secret weapon of that talent.
I think it's one of the biggest value of a corporate VC is to leverage what is called the mothership. I want to double click on one thing you said and then move on to your investment thesis, which is some of the questions I see. The double click is on the board of directors or observers. And I know that you do both. And I want to have a feel of whether it's whatever you can get, or there is sometimes a conscious choice to have observer versus a director.
An observer seat is a director in everything in that you don't vote. And in my experience, there haven't been that many times that there's been really serious votes. But, I'm sure as my career goes on, there will be plenty of, important voting situations. But what I've always called us is we're very active observers and we like to be extremely involved. And oftentimes if there is some type of, partnership with Applied that's more formal, some kind of active engagement, the board is really looking at us to understand what's going on with that engagement and also get our feedback. As far as the decision, we would definitely not take what you can get. I would say we're very intentional about, does this make the most sense for the startup and for Applied to have a board seat? Thinking about board composition, thinking about how we can balance out the board. But an observer seat is very important to us at a minimum because we want to be very involved with the company. I think of board meetings very much as that information can flow in, but not out. Of course, confidential. The observer seat can be really, really great and make sense in a lot of situations, especially when you already have a really good relationship with the startup. I have some startups that always reach out to me for advice and feedback, regardless of whether I'm officially a director or whatnot. And there's that trust there.
That's actually for me the right sign, is when you have enough engagement and intimacy with the founders that it actually doesn't matter you're on the board or not. You're going to be able to engage, help them, they're going to answer the right question. So I want to move now to the test that I already asked CVCs. In 1 minute, can you describe your investment thesis?
I'd say we invest very much in inflections, in big technology inflections that are enabling a whole new wave of application. So we're at a really interesting time, I think, right now with AI, quantum, autonomous vehicles, life sciences, augmented reality. And that's our thesis. We're betting on the next big thing and the next big technology that's going to really change people's lives.
Beautiful. Tell us about what stage do you like the most and what stage would you say no to, for example?
It's more heavily weighted on fit. That said, sweet spot is probably Series A. What's fun about early stage investing, it's like the Wild West. Who knows where this is going to go? But the economics right now, it's really attractive valuation. But there's also something about later stage investing with just such a rock star team and a rock star investor syndicate and board. And they are so dialed. And it is just such a high level of professionalism. That's where I really learn a lot as well. I think I probably prefer earlier just because that's where we can really help.
I think that's a really good way to say it. At TDK Ventures, what we say, it's early projects. And what we've invested in seed, A, and even B. And that was all fairly early stage. But we also invested in SLD Laser, which was a E, and we just invested today in Gencell, which is a F. But inside these two companies that are very late stage, they have early projects where TDK can add value and can influence the outcome and can de-risk the outcome. And because of that, we decided to invest because we feel like it's early projects enough with high level of risk, but high potential, so therefore high reward that we invested. How do you think the right balance should be struck between the strategic fit and financial ROI as a CVC?
Really good question. I would say that strategic fit is the hurdle, and then financial, we model very much for financial returns. Like we want to back winners because their success is our success, not just in terms of financial. As I said, we are highly strategic, but it is absolutely mandatory that I have to believe that we are going to make money off of the company. So, of course, we're not going to have growth stage VC. They have to have this type of revenue. We need to get this type of multiple, this IRR. Both are very much requirements. If we're helping a company kind of limp along, we're not really doing them a great service either.
No, I like your answer, and now I can disclose, but I really don't like this type of questions that anchor a false choice. To me, startups that would be great for financial reasons and some which are great for strategic reasons. And what you need to do is to find this overlap. Right. The spectrum from strategic to financial is just the wrong question or the wrong anchor in the question. You've been going for a decade, Applied Ventures. You've got 3 funds. The first one was 50 million. The second one was 100. And the third one was 150. Can you tell me about how this progression happened and how do you think it moves forward?
Yeah. So leadership at Applied is really supportive of Applied Ventures. So we're definitely bullish, and I'm definitely really glad that we have that support and that vision from that leadership that thinks we've done a great job and wants us to continue to do a great job and is really supportive on how we think about investing in these interesting times. So as far as future funding, I wouldn't be surprised if we start deploying even more capital. I do think we found a sweet spot of the appropriate amount of capital for the amount of deals that really make sense for us to do. But maybe we'll start doing even bigger checks or leading bigger rounds. I wouldn't be totally surprised, just given our track record and our support internally. I think we're just at a really cool time with so many just mind-boggling technologies that are emerging.
I definitively hope so, and really showing success beyond normal exits, but also IPOs. Can you tell when you think it makes sense for a CVC to do a fund versus only doing direct?
Fund is really great as an extension of yourself. We found that there's really a value of just being kind of close with applied leadership. That said, it's harder to source deals internationally. That's where the employees that you have a good relationship with on the business unit side can really help. If you're trying to extend your exposure to whether it's an investment area or space that you're not really tapped into, or geography, I think it makes a lot of sense. You got to roll up your sleeves and get your hands dirty. And I think direct investing is, depending on what the goals are of the CVC, I think it really makes a lot more sense.
Thank you, Jaclyn. It was a really good conversation, a lot of good insights you shared. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you.